Today we'll be looking at getting the most out of our shot creator moves so you can create more separation and become harder to guard in NBA 2K25. I'm Jersey93 and this is the Shot Creator Guide. With NBA 2K25's implementation of Pro Play, we now have improved step backs, spin jumpers, half spin jumpers, and side steps. And I'll be guiding you on how you can use all of these moves effectively online. And we will be using some offline footage to help as a guide so you can see why these moves are effective. Let's quickly cover how to trigger some basic shot creator moves. The hand the basketball is in will determine the animation you'll trigger. Also, how you're facing the basket will give you different animations. If you're driving directly towards or across the basket, you must hold turbo and then move the right stick either down, left, or right to trigger the signature shot creator move that you want. A good drill to understand the system is to drive only in one direction at first and see which animations you can trigger from just that side. Then drive in the same direction, but try to hold the right stick towards your opposite hand. You'll trigger an animation that will cross the basketball towards that hand before you go into a shot. So again, experiment with different players in different directions so that you can know how to unlock all their signature shot creator moves. All right, let's move on to our first set of animations. Let's start with side steps. Now we are going to be discussing the side step jumpers a little bit longer compared to the other moves in this video, but the techniques that I show will also apply to them as well. Side steps are shots you can access by holding turbo and then holding the right stick to the right, left, or down, or you can press square or X and then move the left stick in any of the previously mentioned directions. In my opinion, you should use rhythm shooting when labbing so you can increase the success rate. You can also access or unlock a different animation if you haven't dribbled the basketball yet, and the animation you'll unlock will depend on which hand the basketball is in. So for example, holding the right stick to the right but the basketball is in your left hand, that will trigger a different animation and vice versa. As for badges, you'll need Deadeye and Shifty Shooter to make sure you can consistently make these shots and to reduce the effectiveness of any contest on the shot. While this guide's main purpose is to show you how to get open and clean looks with these moves, you shouldn't fear taking a contested shot, especially if you have rhythm shooting down. Only if a defender has the challenger badge, which will negate Deadeye and Shifty Shooter to a large degree, you can still make contested shots over those defenders. By simply focusing on your shot and looking for your cue to release the basketball, even with something like challenger, it does not stop you from being able to green these shots. It just makes it very difficult. So just be mindful that these shots are still going to be based off of your timing versus anything else. So let's look at some examples of side step jumpers in game and how to set them up. The first way I like to set up side step jumpers is to use them in the pick and roll. Not all side steps are meant to be used in ISO situations. Some players have side steps specifically for the pick and roll so that they can stay behind the three-point line when defenders go under screens. Let's look at one of these Kevin Durant shots, for example. With the basketball in KD's left hand, when we hold the left stick towards the left, we'll trigger this. And with the basketball in his right hand and pulling the right stick to the right, we'll trigger this. The animation towards his left is meant for pick and rolls. It's a great way to also get behind the three-point line without the need of a hard stop, while the animation to the right is meant for isolation scoring. This animation is quicker and is best used with a dribble combo. This is where learning how to blend animations will really help moves like the side step jumper become a little bit more effective. Blending animations is simply bringing two separate animations together into one seamless set of movement. So with that in mind, I want to give you guys a few examples of blending for side step jumpers. In this blend, I'm using one of KD's signature side step combos and I'm blending it to the right side step jumper as he does the front crossover. If you time it correctly, it'll look very similar to go-to shot animations. One thing I want you guys to pay attention to is how Jalen Johnson is backed off and he shifts off the dribble moves first. This is ideally when you want to go for your side step jumper if you're setting it up with a dribble combo. Another reason why you want to wait till they're backing off is that their hands will be down and they won't be able to contest on time. The next way I like to set up a side step jumper is to use them with breakdowns. Breakdowns are dribble sequences you can trigger by flicking the right stick up with or without turbo. With turbo, you'll do an aggressive breakdown, which are faster, compared to the regular breakdowns. Usually I like to blend these animations during the sequence that has a hezi or slowdown, but you can find your own branching points when you practice. So let's walk through creating a blend with Devin Booker. We'll be using his crossover pull-up, which is done by starting with the basketball in his left hand and then holding the right stick and turbo towards his right. And here is Devin Booker's breakdowns. This is his regular breakdown, and then the next clip is going to be his aggressive breakdown. The animation by itself is not the fastest animation, but once we add it with our breakdowns, you can see it's a lot harder to read. This isn't the only animation that fits his breakdowns, but it's a good example of how you should practice blending. Blending a sidestep during the hezi or slowdown can create this change of pace effect, which makes it harder for defenders to contest or predict the shot. Here's a perfect example of this with Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown's breakdown, towards the end of it, it will look like he's relaxing, but when we go into his right hand sidestep and time it correctly, it creates a very quick change of pace. And because of the elevation he has on his jump shot, smaller guards won't have a major effect on him missing. Just to briefly explain how speed-ups happen, the defender has to be crowding you on the gather and he has to jump directly in front of you, and of course they have to have the correct perimeter defense ratings and a challenger badge. I also want to add, low-rated defenders also have a tougher time changing direction, so even when they back up, it's harder for them to close that distance. So you don't have to put in as much work to set up these sidestep jumpers compared to an elite defender. If they try to contest but they're on the side of the shooter, they won't make as big of an impact. Let's see an example of this with Luka right here. Now Kevin Porter Jr. is going to get a moderate shot coverage on that Luka shot because he is much closer as Luka is gathering the basketball compared to some of the other defenders that we've seen so far in this video. So I want you guys to remember, if you are going to go for these type of shots, please make sure that the defender has backed up so that you aren't going to get a big penalty when they do try to contest. So how does all of this work online? The first thing is that you got to practice the shots that you want to take or you're trying to implement into your game before you even jump into a game. Now, as we look at this in-game footage, we're going to notice that I don't use the aggressive breakdown by itself. It's actually after I use an escape. The other thing is the aggressive breakdown, you don't have to use the entire animation, you could just use part of it. But the same thing, once I notice that he backed off of me, I'm going to rise up and I'm going to shoot. Again, they cannot close that distance. Let's actually move on to the next clip. In this clip with Shai, I'm going to let more of the breakdown play out so I can read how my opponent is playing the drive. I'm going to blend it to create that change of pace we spoke about earlier and rise up and shoot. The example we gave earlier was the Jaylen Brown clip. If you do this correctly, your opponent won't have a lot of time to react. Now with this play with Tyrese, I'm going to let the breakdown play out because with opponents like this that slide all over the place, the best way to counter them is to slow down and catch them while they're shifting. As he's trying to get in position, I'm going to use Tyrese's right hand side step, which gives me the separation I need for an open three. In this next clip, I want to showcase how blending helps you with quick defenders, especially because a lot of you guys play Parks, Theater, or Rec. While breakdowns are an easy way to set up your sidestep jumpers, they're not the only way. Using left stick dribble moves and size ups will actually work better in these modes in my opinion, since you can't really expose the basketball to players with high steal ratings for very long. So in this clip, I'm going to size up and force him to lean towards the left before I go into my crossover sidestep jumper. In terms of blending, you can see this is really difficult for my opponent to read because the animations look real natural and you can't really tell where I'm going with the basketball. So that is sidestep jumpers. Let's move on to pullbacks and step backs. Pullback and step back animations, to be effective, you actually want to get as close as possible to the defender before initiating these moves. Let's look at this step back jumper example with SGA online. My opponent has a good cutoff angle because he's playing back and that gives him time to recover. I'm anticipating the contact that's about to happen. Once it does, I'm going right into my step back with SGA. These animations work with contact or if a defender is in a full sprint because we're using their momentum against them. This is not going to work if you're getting cut off animations. You have to be in a hip right animation or the beginning of a hip right animation. And of course, this works even with the more generic step backs that's in 2K. And when I mean generic, I mean like non-pro play, non-signature. A great way to set up the step back is to actually use your physical handles crossovers first. So if you are facing a defender that you can unlock your physical handles crossovers against, please use your physical handle crossover and then go into your step back. When you see it in fast motion, it should be something smooth like this. To get step backs to work without the contact, you should try to sell a drive towards the basket and wait for the defender to try to cut you off before you trigger the step back. So you should practice triggering step backs immediately after doing a launch towards the basket. This play does a great job of showing how step backs use the defender's momentum to create that separation for open looks. I'm setting the step back up with an advanced left stick double between the legs move that freezes him, and while my build is slower, that hesitation by the defender now forces him to catch up to me. If you notice, while he isn't a full sprint, his body is turned and facing the basket, and this is why he isn't able to change directions and contest the shot, because his momentum carries him away from me. Now let's move on to pullback jumpers. Now I do have a complete guide on how to trigger step backs for NBA 2K24, but for the pullbacks, I actually am going to show you how to do these moves because I know a lot of people can be confused. So let's go to the practice shot. To do a pullback animation, you have to be moving directly towards the basket or laterally. Laterally means side to side. So if you're on the 2K cam, that's going to be left to right or right to left. Then you want to pull the right stick towards the hand that doesn't have the basketball in it. Now you can pull directly to the left or down and to the left, similar to a between the legs dribble animation. If you drive directly towards the basket, you will have to trigger this early before you reach the paint so you don't trigger a dunk or layup. I've noticed the pullback shots that are going towards the rim are typically quicker compared to the ones you'll trigger while moving laterally. The lateral ones seem to be useful when coming off the screens and the defender is in a full sprint trying to cut you off, while the animations that require you to drive more directly towards the rim are quicker and create a lot of separation once you've used them during a hip right animation. Actually, let's look at some online examples here. Learning how to score off of a hip right animation will really separate you and make you harder to guard. Even in real life, if you can learn how to score off of contact, it's not much a defender can do with you. It's the same principle as a step back. Once the hip right animation triggers, let it play out a little bit, but not to the point where you'll lose your speed. And once you get to your spot, go into your pullback animation. We could also get this animation or these animations to work without the contact, and this next play is going to be a prime example of this. Creating contact is how you can consistently get the separation you'll need for these shots, but if you can force your opponent into a full sprint like I did here, you'll want to wait until he gets as close as possible so he can build up his speed in one direction before you initiate the pullback jumper, because we're trying to use his momentum against him. Again, it's a little bit more difficult to create this exact scenario, but if you can, the pullback jumper should be your first option. Again, same scenario, without the contact, he slide into the baseline. Okay, finally let's talk about spin and half spin jumpers. Spin jumpers are pretty simple to pull off. The issue is they're typically longer animations that require a lot of space. There's various ways to do spin jumpers. You can initiate a spin jumper by double tapping square on PlayStation or X on Xbox while driving towards the basket or moving laterally. You can also rotate the right stick clockwise. And to perform a half spin jumper, you can rotate the right stick in a half circle. Now, the best time to use these shots is when you're closely guarded. The main setup is to try to get the defender to commit to one side and then spin off of that contact. The beginning of a hip right animation is ideally when you'll want to trigger these. Now, I also want to add, you can use rhythm shooting with these shots. You're not going to see that in my clips. I don't know why, I'm just used to shooting with the button when it comes to spin shots. And we also want to look for the same thing when it comes to the half spin jumper. Honestly, the closer you can get to the defender, the better. And also, I think it's best to use this move after one dribble, because you're trying to get the defender on his heel. You're already close to him, so he's already afraid of you driving around him, and then that's where the half spin jumper is really going to shine. DeMar has the best one in the game. If they play you really well, you can go through your step through. So if you need help with the pivot system, I have a video for that in the comment section below. And so that's the basics to shot creating. And there are more advanced jump shot animations like that you can access, but you have to experiment. Different players have different animations due to pro play for different situations and scenarios. Some players have contextual animations that you can only do in game and not in the practice gym. Now, let's talk about how to do this move with Luka. Hey guys, I have to kindly ask you to please drop the number 24 in the comment section below, as well as leave a like. This will let me know who has watched the video all the way up until this point, and this will help support the channel. We want to start with holding L2 since we've already started dribbling in this situation, and then we want to move the right stick down as we exit the post. Make sure that Luka is facing the right. This will not trigger if he's facing the left. Now, if you haven't dribbled already, we want to start with a step over, but as you see right here with the step over, he's going to swing towards the right. As he's swinging back towards the right, we want to go and press the right stick down, and then that's going to trigger this animation. Just the two easiest ways to access this move. And be sure to check out my last couple videos for NBA 2K25. I know the last one that I just dropped, the NBA 2K25 Help Defense Guide, has been a big help for a lot of people. Also, check out the off-ball control guide so you can learn how to get open, especially if you play modes like Rec or Theater Park. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I'm Jersey 93, and I'm signing out for the last time this time. Peace.